As you know by now, James Comey is facing 2 indictments on federal charges and maybe more charges coming down the path. We'll explain that to you in just a moment. His response, though, to these, his message that he delivered via selfie Instagram video, it was weird, it was creepy, and he looked like a guilty man. We'll show you that in a second. But first, here's how CNN reported the news. Again, understand the news, the headline, the story is that former FBI Director James Comey has been indicted on federal charges of leaking classified information and lying about it under oath. Here's how CNN reported that story to their viewers.
Tonight, the president is celebrating, writing in all caps on Truth Social, quote, "Justice in America. One of the worst human beings this country has ever been exposed to is James Comey, the former corrupt head of the FBI. Today, he was indicted by a grand jury on 2 felony counts for various illegal and unlawful acts. He has been so bad for our country for so long and is now at the beginning of being held responsible for his crimes against our nation." The president ended his post with "Make America Great Again." This comes as I'm told by sources tonight that James Comey is expected to surrender tomorrow morning. We'll be watching, obviously, that appearance very closely. But the former director of the FBI has already made quite clear tonight that he's prepared to fight these charges.
Yeah, and then they showed the creepy Instagram selfie Taylor Swift fangirl video from the former FBI director. We'll show that to you in a second. But isn't that hilarious? CNN, the big story here is that Donald Trump is happy. Our top story tonight, Donald Trump is celebrating, not that the former FBI director has been indicted. And by the way, as I show you many clips, and we've got many clips of the media coverage of this story, notice one through line, notice one common denominator. Very rarely do the anchors, the hosts, the reporters, the blow-dried teleprompter readers, and even the legal analysts, very rarely do they actually say, here is what he's been accused of. Here is the evidence, and here is our analysis to suggest whether he's actually guilty of these crimes or not. That barely made it into the conversation. Instead, it was always about the precedent that is being set, and this is just revenge at Donald Trump against his political enemies, and we've crossed the Rubicon. And it's like, okay, but did he do it? Is he actually guilty of the crime? They don't want to talk about that. You know why they don't want to talk about that. We'll talk about that. First, though, President Trump, on his way up to New Jersey for the weekend and to attend the Ryder Cup, stopped and talked to reporters on the South Lawn, and he delivered a stunner.
Now that James Comey has been indicted, who is the next person on your list in this retribution?
It's not a list, but I think there'll be others. I mean, they're corrupt. These were corrupt, radical left Democrats, because Comey essentially was he was worse than a Democrat. I would say the Democrats are better than Comey, but no, there'll be others. Look, that's my opinion. They weaponized the Justice Department like nobody in history. What they've done is terrible, and so I hope there are others. You can't let this happen to a country.
Will you appoint a permanent U.S. attorney to try this case? Lindsey Halligan has never tried a case.
Well, we'll see, but it's a pretty easy case because, look, he lied. You saw my truth today. He lied. It was yes, no. He didn't say, well, in my opinion, he didn't do a lot of things that maybe he should have, but I don't think he could because he lied. That was a very important question that he was asked, and he wanted to be specific, but he didn't. The only thing that happened to him, he didn't think he'd get caught. That answer that he gave, that was a very important answer. And for him, it was a very good answer if he didn't get caught. But he got caught lying to Congress.
How is this not? He met the Australian President Trump. Are you worried now that the next time there's a Democratic president, they will indict your FBI director or people in your administration?
That's what they tried to do, right? They did it with me for 4 years. They went after me. They went after me for 4 years, and that doesn't include the 4 great years that we had in the White House. So when I ran it from, 2016, when we won, it began before I got to office. You know that. Wait a minute. Before I came to office, I started hearing rumors about Russia. I said, what the hell do I have to do with Russia? Nothing. And then it got worse and worse. And some of the fakers, not you, but some of the fake news picked it up and they loved it. And we went through a long time with that. And despite that, we had a great first term.
Because that's how it went, where they made you go and take a mugshot. Is this more about justice or is it about revenge?
It's about justice, really. It's not revenge. It's about. It's also about the fact that you can't let this go on. They are sick, radical left people, and they can't get away with it. And Comey was one of the people. He wasn't the biggest, but he's a dirty cop. He's always been a dirty cop. Everybody knew it, and it's as far as the case is concerned, he gave an answer. It was a strong answer. He then verified it a couple of times because that was a very important answer. If he would have equivocated, if he would have been like a little bit less sure, that would have been very bad for him. So he gave an answer. The only problem is for him, he didn't think it'd be caught, and he got caught, Peter.
Trail that sometimes revenge is justified. Is that what you're saying?
This is about justice. He lied. He lied a lot, but this was a very important thing. He could have said, well, maybe, or I don't remember. He didn't say that. He gave a very specific answer, and then he verified it numerous times, and he got caught. The problem that Comey has is he got caught lying, and he was very strong. It's not like, well, maybe, or I don't remember, or he gave a very specific answer because it was a very powerful question, a very important question. And when he gave the answer, the only problem is he got caught. So,
all right. So there's President Trump on message, repeating over and over again. This problem is that Comey gave an answer, a strong answer. He thought he could get away with it. He got caught. He lied. All right. Have you noticed, by the way, all of the reporters and all of the analysts and all of the teleprompter readers who say, well, this is just revenge. It's revenge. This is Trump seeking revenge. And nobody is stepping forward saying, revenge for what? What did they do to him? And when you can answer that question, then you realize that they used the law as a weapon against Donald Trump. Now, I'm not saying that means this is revenge, but the people who suggest it's revenge are leaving out part of the conversation, which is revenge for what? And when you answer that, you're basically admitting that he was wrongly prosecuted by this guy, and now Trump is just seeking revenge against him. But let's get to the crux of the actual case. You just heard Trump lay it out. He gave a strong answer. He didn't equivocate. He didn't use weasel words. He didn't say best of my recollection. He gave a firm answer, and that answer was a lie. And that's the bottom line. That should be the only conversation in the media right now. And ironically, it's the only conversation they're not having. All right, so what was the question and answer? Let's go back. This is 2020. This is a hearing before the Judiciary Committee. Senator Ted Cruz of Texas reminds James Comey of testimony he gave earlier in 2017 to Chuck Grassley, the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, where he was asked specifically, did you leak information or did you authorize anyone else to leak that information? Understand, because this is 2020 and COVID protocols, James Comey is actually doing this via remote, but that doesn't change the fact that he is under oath. He is testifying before the Senate. He has to tell the truth. If he lies, he's breaking the law. So let's watch the moment.
To another topic. On May 3rd, 2017, in this committee, Chairman Grassley asked you point blank, quote, have you ever been an anonymous source in news reports about matters relating to the Trump investigation or the Clinton investigation? You responded under oath, quote, never. He then asked you, quote, have you ever authorized someone else at the FBI to be an anonymous source in news reports about the Trump investigation or the Clinton administration? You responded again under oath, no. Now, as you know, Mr. McCabe, who works for you, has publicly and repeatedly stated that he leaked information to the Wall Street Journal and that you were directly aware of it and that you directly authorized it. Now, what Mr. McCabe is saying, and what you testified to this committee cannot both be true. One or the other is false. Who's telling the truth?
I can only speak to my testimony. I stand by what the testimony you summarized that I gave in May of 2017.
So your testimony is you've never authorized anyone to leak. And Mr. McCabe, if he says contrary, is not telling the truth. Is that correct?
Again, I'm not going to characterize Andy's testimony, but mine is the same today.
All right, I'm going to make a final point because my time has expired. This investigation of the president was corrupt. The FBI and the Department of Justice were politicized and weaponized. And in my opinion, there are only two possibilities: that you were deliberately corrupt or woefully incompetent. And I don't believe you were incompetent. This has done severe damage to the professionals and the honorable men and women at the FBI, because law enforcement should not be used as a political weapon. And that is another.
And that is exactly what James Comey did. Thank you, Senator Cruz. That's the moment right there. That's one of the moments. Now, there may be more charges against James Comey. We'll get to that coming up in just a second, but understand what was just said there. We know information was leaked to the media. We know it was leaked via the FBI, and Andy McCabe, who, by the way, got fired from the FBI by Christopher Wray and by Rod Rosenstein and by Attorney General William Barr under Donald Trump in 2020. Andrew McCabe, who was the deputy director of the FBI, he said that it was a completely legal leak that he gave to the New York Times, I think it was, because James Comey authorized him to do it. See what's happening here? The rats who are leaving the sinking ship are all pointing at each other. McCabe said, hey, yes, I leaked, but it was because Comey told me to. Comey said, I never told anybody to leak. In fact, I wasn't even aware of any leaks. And Andy McCabe says, oh, I brought this to Comey's attention, and he said it was okay. Somebody's lying. And this should be fascinating when the testimony is heard in open court. Now, will there be other charges? Catherine Herridge, who is one of the best reporters in Washington, D.C., and very well sourced on this and has been covering the FBI for over a decade, says that she believes that there are more charges that can be brought against James Comey. We're going to get to what those charges might be coming up in a bit. And thankfully, we've got James Comey's own words, his own public proclamations that can very well be used against him. That's kind of how it works, right? What you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. That would be the Miranda rights. It applies even before you're arrested. James Comey knows that. The reason that those indictments might be coming down the lane is because this indictment, Catherine Herridge, as she reads it, is kind of wide open. This is sort of a placeholder. They wanted to get this one in before the statute of limitations because the 5-year mark of his testimony is coming up next week. That testimony that you just saw, that was 2020. It was the fall of 2020, 5 years ago next week. So if you're going to indict him on this, you had to get it in now. And they did. And they did. Now, Donald Trump just said there could be other indictments coming on other people. We want to hear from you down below who you think should be indicted next, who you think will be indicted next. Here's John Solomon from Just the News, who's been covering this story for over a decade as well. Here's him breaking that information last night on Hannity.
I think other government officials are in danger of being indicted in the coming weeks, some in the FBI, some in other parts of the government. This is the beginning of a large accountability roundup in government. And I think what's really remarkable, most of my career I've spent uncovering FBI cover-ups. The FBI has a long history of misleading Congress. Comey falls into that. But the evidence against Comey tonight comes from the FBI and its new director, Kash Patel, who promised radical transparency. And he actually provides the key piece of evidence that leads to this indictment. If you're a member of Congress and you've been tired of lying, being lied to by the FBI, tonight's the first time the FBI actually did something about it. They turned in their own man tonight. I think that's an extraordinary part of this story.
Yeah, we're going to have a really deep dive.
It sure is an extraordinary part of this story. And understand that. That's right. FBI has a long history going all the way back to J. Edgar Hoover. It's sort of operating on their own and utilizing the law as a political weapon against people in Washington and against just everyday citizens like you and me. They've been prevaricating and skirting around the truth when Congress is trying to administer their oversight. That's why in the 70s, there was a huge new round of FBI reforms about who they could wiretap, who could authorize wiretaps. James Comey and his FBI, they just peed all over those new regulations. We know that. They weaponized the FISA court. They went after an innocent man, Carter Page, and claimed he was a Russian spy when he wasn't. They put out a false FISA warrant that James Comey put his name to, verifying the information, and it was accurate when it wasn't. And if you're Congress and you actually take your role of oversight seriously, you're happy now that finally somebody's getting indicted on this, because it's not new. There's nothing new about this. The only difference is somebody actually got indicted, and it was the FBI who turned in one of their own. That's a big deal. Who else might be coming? Here's Catherine Herridge. As I mentioned, she's with CBS. Well, excuse me. She got fired by CBS News because she told the truth too often. She's now an independent journalist, and you can subscribe to her work on the X platform. She says, based on my 2 decades covering the FBI and the Justice Department, a thin indictment suggests a holding charge with the potential of a more complex superseding indictment that adds more charges. This is not only possible, but plausible in Comey's case, based on the recently declassified FBI leak investigations via Director Kash Patel of the FBI, codenamed Arctic Haze. What is Arctic Haze? Well, let's keep reading. The Arctic Haze records reveal several FBI senior leaders and Columbia law professor Daniel Richman said they coordinated media leaks at Comey's direction. James Rybecki, former FBI chief of staff, James Baker, former FBI general counsel, Andrew McCabe, former deputy director, and Daniel Richman, Columbia law professor. August 14th, I was among the first to report on Arctic Haze. The parties did not respond to my request for comment about the declassified Arctic Haze records. Let's focus for a moment on that Columbia law professor, Mr. Richman. This is an old friend of James Comey. And he mentioned, I believe it was in his book, that he had shared information with Daniel Richman to leak to the New York Times about his interactions with Donald Trump. The problem is those interactions with Donald Trump, the president-elect, that James Comey memorialized in a personal journal, well, that was while he was FBI director. That means the document that he created saying, I talked to President-elect Trump and I told him this about the Steele dossier, et cetera, et cetera. This is all stuff that got leaked to the New York Times by Daniel Richman. He created those logs while he was FBI director, which means it's a work product of the federal government. And I'm sorry, you're not allowed to say, oh, I'm writing this down as FBI director, but now I'm writing this stuff that relates to my job as FBI director as a private citizen, James Comey. No. You don't get that benefit. You're always the FBI director, especially if you're writing down stuff that happened on the job, giving a briefing to the president-elect about the Steele dossier. That's work product. And James Comey knows that. James Comey, everyone's like, oh, this is outrageous. No one would bring these charges. James Comey was the most powerful law enforcement officer in the country. He was the FBI director. The standard for the FBI director should not be lower than any standard normal American citizen like Michael Cohen. Michael Cohen, the president's former lawyer turned rat, he got indicted and convicted for lying in front of Congress. The same charge that James Comey is now facing. Should the standard be higher for Michael Cohen than it is for James Comey? It's the opposite. If anything, you should expect more from your FBI director than a sleazy New York lawyer. So if you bring these charges against the sleazy New York rat-faced lawyer, you certainly should bring them against a man who was so powerful and the paragon of virtue, truth, justice, and the American way, and wielded all of that lawfare power as FBI director. So James Comey knows this. He knows what's legal and illegal, and he knew that when he gave Michael Richman, this Columbia law professor, Daniel Richman, excuse me, these personal accounts of what he said to President-elect Trump when he was briefing him on the Steele dossier that Mr. Richman then leaked to the New York Times, he knew that that was work product because guess what? He hired Daniel Richman specifically as like a consultant to the FBI, specifically so he could share classified information with him. This was premeditated. They have the evidence. And this is just the start. So here's the big moment. James Comey decides to release his own statement about this last night after the indictments came down. So he set up his ring light and his vanity lighting. He put on a shirt, tie, and jacket from the waist up. Lord knows what he's wearing from the waist down. And he does a Dear Diary video blog for his Instagram account. This time, not about how much he loves Taylor Swift. This time about his guilt or innocence. And he's going to say that he's not guilty. But I want you to look in his eyes as he says this. Go ahead. Look deep into those eyes.
My family and I have known for years that there are costs to standing up to Donald Trump, but we couldn't imagine ourselves living any other way. We will not live on our knees, and you shouldn't either. Somebody that I love dearly recently said that fear is the tool of a tyrant, and she's right. But I'm not afraid, and I hope you're not either. I hope instead you are engaged, you are paying attention, and you will vote like your beloved country depends upon it, which it does. My heart is broken for the Department of Justice, but I have great confidence in the federal judicial system, and I'm innocent. So let's have a trial and keep the faith.
Now, a lot of things are interesting about this. Some of the things that were said and some of the things that were not said. First, the stuff that was said. The fact that he used this 52-second video to deliver the message. He used part of that 52 seconds to deliver the message that you need to go out there and vote. Why would he say that? What the next national election isn't until November of 2026, over a year from now. I guess the Virginia governor's race and New Jersey governor's race are next month, but that has nothing to do with this. So why would he use part of his 52-second video to tell people to go out and vote? That's sending a message to Democrats right now in the House of Representatives that he's their guy and he's more than willing to be some kind of martyr that they can raise money off of, and that he'll go out there as some sort of proxy to raise money. Here's what the Democrats are going to do with this. The Democrats are going to make the case to voters in 2026 that Trump is out of control, that Trump is using the law as a weapon, that he's a fascist, he's an authoritarian. See, I know they're going to do this because it's all they've done for the last 10 years. But they're going to use Comey as an example. See, this is why Democrats need to be in charge of the House, so we can hold Trump accountable. This is why you have to vote for Democrats, not because of the economy or the border or transgender policies or national security or the budget or taxes or spending and all the things you hate about us. You hate all those things because we're wrong on all those issues. But the one thing we can do is we'll hold Trump, the fascist authoritarian, accountable. Look what they're doing to Comey. You've got to put us in power so we can impeach him. That's why Comey just said that. That's why Comey said, make sure you go out there and vote. He's letting Democrats know, use me. I'm your guy. Protect me. Do whatever you can. I'm your foot soldier. Let's go. The other interesting thing about those 52 seconds is what he didn't say. He said he's not guilty, and then he said, let's have a trial. Well, wait a minute. Why are you waiting for the courtroom to tell us why you're innocent? It would have been really simple for James Comey to say, this is what, in fact, let me rephrase what I'm about to say. What would you do if you were in his shoes? If you're about to get indicted for allegedly lying under oath in front of Congress, and we've all seen the video of what you said, what would you do if you truly were innocent? I know what I would do. I'd get right on this camera and say, hey, guys, I'm getting indicted tomorrow, and it's ridiculous. Let me show you what this is really all about. Here's what I said. Now, here's why what I said is true. And they're lying. When they say that I perjured myself, they're lying because what I said was true. And here's the evidence to prove that what I said was true. That's what an innocent person would do. A guilty person who plans on playing to public opinion and try to sway the jury pool and tries to use lawyers' tactics in the courtroom to get off on the charges, that guilty person would do exactly what this weasel just did. I hope you noticed that. But while we're walking down memory lane, let's take a look here at what James Comey said after Donald Trump was indicted. He didn't do the selfie video. I don't think he knew how to yet, but he said that it was a good day for the rule of law. Well, why isn't yesterday a good day for the rule of law? No one is above the law, right? The next time Donald Trump got indicted, by the way, these are indicted on charges that, of course, are in the process of being overturned or already have been overturned by an appeals court. The next time he got indicted, James Comey said, the rule of law endures. That's fascinating, isn't it? And then there was this moment, January 21st, 2021, right after Joe Biden was inaugurated president. What did James Comey have to say then?
Convict him, bar him from future service, have the prosecutors, the local prosecutors in New York, pursue him for the fraudster that he was before he ever became president, lock him up for the garden variety frauds he did there, but don't give him that center stage, that dominant role in our national life just down the street where Joe Biden is trying to heal this nation.
Okay, so right after Joe Biden is sworn in, he's screaming, indict him, lock him up, throw away the key. That sounds like a reasonable, truth, justice in the American way kind of straight shooter. Last June, during the campaign after Trump was charged by Jack Smith, the special prosecutor, he had this to say.
So a lot of people have suggested that there are a range of factors that would make it difficult to put the system has not been tested in this way. Do you agree with that it would be difficult or nearly impossible for the law enforcement institutions to put him in actual jail?
No, they would just put him in a double wide somewhere out near the fence, out in the grass. And he would eat there, he'd shower there, he'd exercise there, he'd be away, as Danya Perry said, from general population, but it's obviously doable.
Wow. Kate, great advice. I wonder if they still have that double wide because they might need it for this guy. I love it when things like this come back to bite you, don't you?